Hey everyone, this is Anne, and I decided that based on some requests, as well as just wanting to record some information for myself as kind of a video diary, that I would do a set of Chatelaine specific vlog type posts and try to walk you all through my thought process with things, how I'm tackling mine, in the hopes that maybe there'll be some hints or tips that will help someone else who's interested in doing a chatelaine. So it is currently July 2017, and I am going to just say right up front that I am shamelessly borrowing this concept from Letitia over at the Crafty Curator. She has a whole set of vlog installments called the Chatelaine Experience that she's been doing for the chatelaine she's been working on. If you are interested as well, I highly recommend Miss Milky Bar Kid. I will link both of those FlossTube channels down below. So she has a great kind of overview, helpful hint, chatelaine working video as well. So this is the Desert Mandala by Chatelaine. This is the one that I'm starting for my birthday week at the end of July. So you have a couple of different options when you buy chatelaines. You still can get some of them as print copies. I opted to go the PDF route because everything I had heard said you really wanted to be able to blow up the charts, and I would agree with that 100%. You certainly can do it manually if you are willing to take the time to do that off the print copies, but it's a whole lot easier to do it on a PDF reader or your computer in some fashion off the PDF rather than the print. So each chatelaine obviously comes with the pattern, and I'm not going to show you that, but what I am going to show you is the materials list. So here's the materials list for this project, the Desert Mandala, and this is one I kitted up myself. So you'll see you have DMC cotton. You can use Anchor if you're so inclined. It's got your list of Gloriana silks, thread gatherer, the page, dinky dyes, petite treasure braid, your beads, crystals, and it also gives you a suggested fabric and the size you would need if you're using either a 16 count or using a linen, a 32 count linen, and working it over 2. Keep in mind that if you decide to go with a hand-dyed fabric, that the 32 count does shrink up a little bit in the dyeing process, and these are fairly bead heavy projects. So in this instance, I opted to go with a 28 count Lugana that is in the colorway Calypso from Picture This Plus. So it's this bright turquoise blue. So you'll see right here, I've pulled all of my DMC threads that I would be using for this project. The project list, obviously you need DMC, and most of the kits do not come with DMC. If you order from European Cross Stitch, you'll need to purchase the DMC yourself. Now, one thing that's really helpful, and this can kind of give you an idea of what you need. Martina has gone through, and for instance here, these are all the Gloriana silks. If you decide that you want to substitute any of the silk colors for plain DMC, she does give you suggestions right here that are the DMC colorway numbers. And she also tells you how many yards of each color you're going to use or how much of a skein. So for instance, let's see if I can find one. Here's Thread Gatherer Antique Rose. It's only 2 yards. So it may be, if you're trying to save some money, you may decide that it's not worth it buying all of the silks and you just want to buy some of them. For some of the ones that call for less amounts, that might be something to consider swapping out. And I'll talk more about the silks in a minute. So again, my DMC colors. And these are the Petite Treasure braid that are used in this project. So let me talk about the silks here for a minute. Let me scooch these out of the way. So this project also calls for silken colors. It calls for a couple of dinky dyes. It calls for a bunch of Gloriana silk, or excuse me, water lilies. That's what those are. And then the Gloriana. So you can see from the silk choices that some of them, like this blue, which is Mediterranean by Water Lilies, or this Gloriana, which is bluegrass, are much more variegated than some of the others. For instance, this Gloriana, that's Jacaranda, is fairly solid. So again, if you wanted to switch out some of the silks, the important thing is sort of knowing which ones to pick. Again, Martina does give you suggestions for replacing some of the silks with, or any of the silks with DMC if there's a color match. But for instance, we talk about this colorway specifically, the bluegrass from Gloriana. You can see it's a very variegated colorway. And the suggested DMC substitute is 3347. So this color is in this hand-dyed colorway, but in my opinion at least, this is not going to give you anywhere close to the same effect if you were to substitute the flat DMC colorway for the silk in that case. So kind of a personal preference and what your budget is for the project and how you want to tackle this. I did have Sarah asked me about the difference between kitting up yourself cost and ordering from European cross stitch, where everything comes to you pre-packaged exactly what you need. And I found that it pretty much came out in the wash. I was able to get some things less expensively maybe than I would have per unit, but by the time I paid shipping from 4 different places to get everything I needed, and because of how I had to buy the beads, which I'll talk about in a minute, it really kind of came out in the wash. I don't think that I necessarily saved any money doing it myself, but there you go. So let's talk about the beads. Again, since I kitted this up myself, I wound up just matching up the number of the Delica bead color that I needed and ordering them. So for this project, I have way more beads than I need. If you order through European cross stitch, you're going to get much smaller containers that have just the exact number you need and a few more, extras for loss. So here are the bead colorways. I love this one, that green, kind of sparkly blue green one. And I'm trying to line up the little crystals and treasures. So let's see. Get all those in the viewfinder for you. So there's some of these little treasures that are these little sort of floral ones. There's some square ones. There's a bunch of bicones, turquoises, greens, these iridescent ones. So this is the supply stack of things that I need. So for this particular pattern, Martina suggests starting all of your mandalas in the center and working out, which is what I'm going to be doing with this one. So I'll be starting here in the center with this lightning area. This whole set is 1/1. And I know that the print picture is a little bit pixelated, so we're sort of doing the best we can with that, but there's an eagle in silhouette, and not that you can see it, but that's supposed to be a coyote, and then of course the lightning strike. So that'll be where I start. My plan is to make some more of these vlogs that kind of walk through the process. So the next one that I'll film will be when I get started on this. I'll have my fabric ready to go. My plan is to put it on scroll frames and then do all of the stitching first and then go back and do the beads. So I'm really excited to start this project. I think it's going to be amazing when it's finished. I love the colors in it. I love all the different Southwest vistas, like in arches. We've actually, we've been we've been through this area, but we have not been to this park, the name of which, I think it's Monument Valley is what she's illustrating there. But anyway, this is where I am for now. You guys have seen all of the beginning stuff. If you have any questions as we go along, please ask. I'm always happy to do my best to answer. And I guess I should also put in the disclaimer that I am by no means an expert, and I'm sure there'll be things that I do differently than other folks, and not to say any one way is right or wrong, just maybe the way I choose to do something. And within that, I'm sure there will be some mistakes, and I'll try to keep you guys kind of posted on my progress. I would think I would have one of these videos once a month. My plan is to work on this for 1 week, 6 days out of the month between now and the end of the year, so the remainder of 2017. And we'll see how far I get. I've got another one kitted up that I want to start January 1st. That's the winter water garden. And if there's enough interest, I will be glad to also do a set of vlogs on that one. It has some slightly different techniques in it. So anyway, until next time, I hope you guys are having a great stitchy week. And I will be back with my kind of step 1, week 1 progress on this chatelaine. So thanks guys for watching. Take care. Hi everyone, this is Anne, and this is going to be the second in my Chatelaine Diaries Chronicles, talking to you guys about working on the Desert Mandala by Chatelaine. This again is the design as finished, and this is the mock-up, I guess I would call it, that is on the chatelaine.de website. So it's a representation of what the piece will look like, but it's not an actual stitched version of it, if that makes any sense. So that's what it looks like. And let's talk about my first week worth of working on it. I opted to work on this for the 6-day rotation here at the end of July 2017. And what I decided to do, let me get my pointer here. I started in the center, and the center chart runs here. Does not include these cactuses. It's the center piece with the lightning bolt, full moon, the hawk, little coyote, and then these flowers. So what I did is I divided this chart, I blew the chart up, I think to about 400%, and then I broke it into 4 quadrants, so sort of halfway through the middle. And I decided to start right here. So let me show you what that looks like. So here's where I am currently on the center. Now, I did a little bit more than an exact quarter of it for this rotation. I wanted to drop down and continue this motif right here. And I went a little bit past the center line here, which, you know, no problem to do that. It actually, I think, will work out because there won't be a ton of sharp demarcation lines in the motifs. You know, sometimes you get lines if you have too straight across. Like when you're doing full coverage, those square blocks, sometimes you can see vertical or horizontal lines, but I don't think that'll be the case with this. So there's nothing scary or difficult about this section. It's all basic cross stitch and some back stitching. That's it. So just some things of note. This color right here, I chose to not purchase the rayon thread that was called for in the pattern. I opted instead to use 37.99 DMC, which is the sort of one shade off of black. The rest of the black here is DMC 310. This whole intersection, the blues and the lightning bolt are all worked in DMC. There are some small stitches, which you can just barely see here, that are a silver cryneck. The tree is actually a black cryneck. No, I'm sorry, I keep saying cryneck and it's petite treasure braid. I obviously have a mental hiccup about that. So silver petite treasure braid here, black petite treasure braid there, and then you can see there's some antique gold right here, as well as more of the silver out in that border. I have not stitched the beads on yet, but there will be this square bead in the center of each of the floral motifs, and there will be, I believe there's actually 3 of these little bicones in the stems of each of these cactus flower motifs. So those will go on last, and they'll be the last things that I put on, but I just wanted to show you guys what those looked like. The spaces that are left here and on this very outer edge, outside this purple line, are going to be delica beads. The inner ones are this purpley color. Those will go in here. And these iridescent ones will go outside the purple there. And again, I'm going to put those on at the very end. I don't want to have any problems or issues with the beads getting crushed working on my scroll frames. I know lots of folks don't have any issues, and I probably would be fine, but I've opted to go ahead and wait until the very end to add all the beads and the treasures. One thing that You'll note on this pattern the hawk image that's right here and this little coyote are worked 1/1. So I haven't gotten that far yet, but that hopefully next rotation I will be able to focus on those and get them worked in over here. So I have had some questions from folks about the different threads because, you know, kitting up a chatelaine can be fairly pricey. I opted to kit this one up myself to just sort of see what the comparison was. And I think I mentioned in my other video clip that I feel like price-wise, this kind of came out in the wash. It wasn't a huge savings for me by the time I wound up paying shipping from like 4 different places to get all the supplies I needed. So really, if you like the idea of just having all of the things that are called for exactly in the pattern, go hit up European Cross Stitch and just buy the kit. It's more expensive all up front, but you're getting everything. One of the things that I ran into was one of the silken colors. I could not find anywhere. I couldn't find it on her Etsy site. She's no longer had that for sale. It wasn't on 123 Stitch. And that was the colorway Golden Pines. So I have not used that yet, but I am going to have to substitute in Green with Envy for that, which is very similar. It's kind of a yellowy green, but it's not the exact same color. So as I mentioned, this section in here is all DMC. So that's pretty basic, except for the little bits of the Petite Treasure braid. The outer borders with the flowers are worked in all silks. So you can see that there's a fair amount of difference in how much variegation some of the colors have. So this, for instance, is Camouflage. It's a Silken Colors silk. Highly variegated. You use it both here and here in this pattern. And while Martina does give you possible DMC substitutes, there's no way that a flat DMC color is going to give you that amount of variegation. Now, the flowers, the flower petals right here are a colorway called Antique Rose, also from Silken Color, but there's almost no variegation in that. There's a little bit right there you can see, and a little bit right there. But that would be one of the colors that you could substitute out with DMC and I think not affect the overall look of the piece. I think the same is true for this Grape, which is a Gloriana colorway. Am I saying that right? I'm looking at my list. It's a fairly extensive list. Water Lily, sorry. It's a Water Lily. Karen Water Lilies in Grape is this kind of fuchsia color. It has a tiny bit of variegation, but not a ton. This really deep dark color is actually called Deep Blue Sea. It has some variegation, which you can see right there, but not in a lot of other places. Excuse me. So again, I think that that's a color that you could potentially substitute. The difference in working with the silks and the cottons, obviously much more luxurious feel when you're pulling it through the fabric. It's just silky smooth, hence the word silk. But in terms of the color itself, I think you could probably find a fair amount of replacement value in DMC colorways, and by doing a little research on the web to figure out which of the silk colors that are called for or are more highly variegated than others, you probably can pick and choose which ones you decide you'd want to use if you're interested in saving a little bit of money on that. I don't know that there's two different greens in here. One is just right down here. It's called Emerald. and that's also a water lilies. That's a color that you could easily substitute out. Trying to think what else is in here. This right here is just DMC, this purple, so that's the same color as here. The silks are a little bit more vibrant, but I think once they're stitched, I don't think that that unless I told you for sure that this was DMC and this was not DMC, that you would necessarily know that. It has a different feel when you're working with it, obviously, but I don't know that the colors for the less variegated silks really show up as a different fiber. The other thing I think I would mention is that there are a fair number of water lilies colors in this particular pattern, and I know that Martina uses the Caron water lily silks a fair amount. So I think there's 2, 4, so there's 6 colorways of the Caron water lilies in this, and if you wanted to, you could substitute their cotton threads. They have all the same colorways. So if you wanted to get one that was a little bit more variegated and use that, you do have an option to purchase those colorways in a cotton, which saves you a little bit. It's still more expensive, obviously, than DMC, but it gets you kind of one step down in that price point for the kitting up of the pattern itself. So that is where I am on this. If you guys have any questions about what I've been working on with this or any of the supplies that I've mentioned, just leave me a comment. I'll be glad to try to get back to you with that. And this beauty will come out again later in August and give you guys another update then once I've gotten a bit more work done on it. So until I talk to you next time, have a good one.